go, like I said, I put my gain on the minimum, and then what I do is I go up in steps until I start seeing it, and go from there. And you know, you always want to go as fast as you can. Okay, the highest number of images per second. And so the next thing you do is you just do region of interest as small as possible.
Hey, we'll get a welcome Bill and Bob. How do you say your last name?
Gruneberg.
Gruneberg. Three syllables. Gruneberg.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
Hi, Bill. And
Hi.
Mike Chipnick is up near Sacramento.
Yeah.
Jerry and I are in Goleta. Where are you at, Bill?
Los Angeles, Westwood area.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll introduce Bill really quickly. He's definitely got an interest in astronomy. He works for Griffith Park Observatory.
Oh, that's the guy, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess less with telescopes. He was wondering whether this would be good, but I said, you know, we talk about all sorts of things, you know, astronomy related, so it should be fine.
How can I get the gasoline from being in my oil on my Honda CRV?
That's anything, but it's not an astronomy anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But I use it to go to outreaches. Yeah, it's funny. The oil level on my Honda CRV goes up as I drive it.
How does that happen?
Evidently, gasoline is dripping by the rings on these Honda CRVs, these direct injection turbo 1.5 liter engines.
Oh,
Okay,
that
so
cause an engine fire of some sort, or
oil in the gas is a head gasket problem. Generally, I've had that.
yeah.
Well, that's usually get water in your oil or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
that's true. That's true.
Anyway, I've got a 5-year warranty, so I'll let it go.
Because it's so old, right?
Got to trade it in on a Tesla Model Y one of these days. All right, let's see. So many people are waiting. I got to admit 2 more people, Tom Crawford and Hank Aling. Oh, Hank is going to join us too. Haven't seen Hank for a while. Hank, how are you doing?
Hi, John.
Got your audio. Got Tom Crawford. Hi, Hank. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
We got
Hi.
7 participants so far. Very good.
Who's Hank? I'm not sure I remember him.
Hank won an award. He's been our club member a long time. He used to come to outreaches at the Bacara. He builds his own telescope mounts.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about
Hey,
you.
Tom. How are you doing?
Good.
Huh. Okay.
Do any of you guys know Tony Cook, who's from Griffith Observatory? He's the head of the telescopes department, basically. All the telescope demonstrators report to him. And I just found out he's retiring, which is sad for me because he's been there so long and he's just so iconic at the observatory. I don't know who they'll replace him with. But if any of you guys are looking for a job, no telescopes.
Oh, I retired.
Yeah, I'm not seeking work.
So Bill, Jerry
grew
up around the Griffith Observatory.
Yeah, we used to visit there when I was a kid in the 50s.
Yeah.
And God, I forgot his first name. We called him Dr. Clemenshaw. He was the director ended his career in the late 50s.
Yeah.
There. And I took mirror making in an optical shop that the Los Angeles Astronomical Society maintained in the basement of the Griffith Observatory, and learned how to grind mirrors there. And God, I forget the guy that took over, the young guy, for a long time.
It wasn't Ed Krupp, was it, who's the current director?
What's spell his name? Kraft?
Crow.
C-R-U-P.
As in the arms of Crow.
Krupp, yeah.
Yeah, he's been the director for 40 years now.
He took over. Yeah.
He was a young kid when he first started going to the VCAS to give talks.
we met once a month in the big planetarium, the Astronomical Society, and Tom Cave would give his monthly Mars talk, pointing out all of the canals he'd seen through his 12.5-inch f11 Newtonian from his backyard in LA.
Wow.
You needed a ladder?
What?
Did you need a ladder?
I didn't. I never went there, but he needed one. And I was an undergraduate starting at Cal State Northridge, so my time was mostly taken with school. But we also knew Tommy. Oh, I forget his last name. But he was the telescope technician on the 60-inch Mount Wilson Observatory. And when something would fall through, we'd go up there and we'd look through that telescope. We get these irregularly unplanned views of things.
Oh, nice.
One of the best views I ever had was through the Griffith Observatory, 12.5 inches of Saturn. It was just so steady. I can still see that in my mind.
On a good night, yeah.
Yeah,
Good nice, clear skies and
there was not a ripple of seeing. It was just
yeah,
solid.
yeah, that can be beautiful.
I think your scope is what, f20 or something?
I don't know. I have to say I'm not a telescope guy. I want to be, and I will be eventually, but I don't know those aspects. I do know it's a 12-inch refractor. That's really
It's his ice, I think.
And the 9.5-inch that you have mounted on it was owned by a private amateur, and he mounted it on the top of his car.
Right.
Drive around LA and show these different, just stop somewhere and collect a crowd. And then he couldn't do it anymore, so he donated it to the observatory, and it was made by the same manufacturer as the main scope, so they mounted it up next to it.
Another Zeiss. Yeah, it looks just like it. It's still mounted up there.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Do you know the story about why he had to stop driving around with a telescope, a 9-inch 9-inch aperture telescope on?
I've never heard a story about that.
Cops kept pulling him over, thinking it was a Canon, and telling him you can't have a Canon in your car.
I was going to say that.
They said, I'm just done with this. And I think he charged like 25 cents a view or something to look through.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So
let's have the bridges and stuff.
Let's ask folks, has anybody got any projects they're working on they want to talk about tonight?
Sure, I'm working on my 18-inch astrograph. I just got the tube delivered today. So I've got a case.
Is the mirror done already?
I've got the mirror. The optics are all ready. And I've got 2 more metal parts that I need to finish with the machine shop here in Santa Barbara. The main mirror cell and the secondary, or not secondary, but the eyepiece connector between the eyepiece holder and the tube. Just a square block with a curved block or curved part underneath of it.
Yeah.
And then
I didn't realize you had finished your mirror, Jerry.
Oh yeah, a long time ago. About 3 years ago.
We
thought you were still working on it.
Well,
yeah, I'm still working on my 8, and I remember you cutting a hole in over at Joe's.
That's a different telescope, and that one I think I've got my arthritis. I've got arthritis in the last year or 2, and I find I can't push glass anymore by hand. So I've got the main mirror and the secondary mirror on a corrected Dalkirkham 14.5-inch. And they're fine ground. They need to be polished and they need to be figured. And if someone's not going to do that for me, then I'm just going to abandon the project. So
if you, I'd help, except that you know how long it takes me to do polishing.
yeah. No, I think I'm too old for that. So
What's the focal length going to be on that?
it's going to be f7, and the primary is f2.8. So.
So what did you use to test the 18-inch?
I use the same Foucault thing that I use to test other things that I make. It's exactly like, but not as beautiful as the one that Tim made for Tom Whittemore.
I see.
Yeah. So, and a much bigger mirror holder to hold it up vertically while I look at it in the dining room.
So Jerry,
is
is
it?
your telescope a Dahl Kirkham? Is it 18 inch? Is it Dahl Kirkham?
18 inches, a straight Newtonian. It's f3.9,
Ooh,
and I've got a field flattener that makes it the whole system an f4.5, but it has the tube length of an f3.9, so it'll be much shorter.
Huh.
So I'm going to retire my current large imager, a 12.5 inch f6. So if anyone knows anyone that wants a super good mirror, it's the only mirror I didn't make. It's by, who's that guy in the East? Oh, well, forgot his name, but he's retired too.
Oh, Royce?
Yeah, Royce, yes. And it's got a central hole in the middle that holds a bolt. So it's, you know, if you're using,
Oh,
if you need a, it was the first cantilevered mirror to make it lightweight.
right.
I
Yeah.
wanted to try that, so I didn't, that's why I didn't make it myself. I'm used to pushing glass that's the same thickness all over. And so, but that mirror is absolutely superb. And so I'm going to be getting rid of that.
that's an F what?
sometime or another. What's that, Tim?
Oh, it's an F what?
It's an F6.
F6 and 12 inch?
12.5.
12 and a half.
Mm-hmm. It's
Jerry,
what they
you know,
call a
Albert High
conical.
had a,
Who's talking?
Albert had a telescope that was like 22 inches. He went up to Lake San Antonio,
Yeah.
and he put it in, he wanted to put it in a Dob, but it had a hole in the middle.
Yeah.
And he was telling me one of the problems that he had was collimating. When you have a hole in the middle, and I still haven't heard a good solution to that.
Well, that's because people nowadays use lasers to try and collimate, and they have to see a spot in the middle of their mirror. I do it the old-fashioned way, where we would look down the tube, because your eye is really very, very sensitive to alignments, and it can see things that are off-center, circles that are not exactly concentric. It's very sensitive to that. And so you look at the inside of the back of your tube and the inside of the front of your tube, and you get your head aligned with the optic axis, and then you tilt it until the reflection of the secondary superimposes on itself. And none of that requires a spot in the middle of the mirror. As a matter of fact, I never put any of those patterns, a sticker in the middle of my mirrors, because I never use any of that for alignment. It's faster, and I think it's more accurate.
What about the star test?
The star test, that's fine. Star test is great. You just get it up, look at the star and rack it out of focus and rack it in focus. And if the pattern looks the same, you're there.
If it shifts, you're out of alignment.
Yeah. And if the thing's out of focus,
So one more time,
and your secondary is
one
off
more time,
center,
Jerry.
then you're not aligned either.
Say that again, Jerry.
Oh, if you look at an image in a Newtonian, you'll see a disc with you'll see a donut. When it's out of focus, if the center hole is not concentric with the outer part of the disc, then you're not aligned either.
Right.
And that's primarily the mirror tilt that you have to work on in that case.
And if it shifts when you go from inside focus to outside focus, that means
You're not
your
aligned either.
focuser is not aligned either.
That's the first thing I do when I align a scope is when I make the hole for the focuser, I put a little button on the tube, like a screw head or something that's real shiny, exactly opposite on the axis of the mechanical focuser, so that as it racks in it, and then I tilt. I use a pinhole with a wire crosshair in it for the eyepiece, and I make sure that I'm lined up with that pin exactly across from it, so that I know that the focuser moves in and out on the optical axis of the telescope. And that step is usually skipped by a lot of people. And it's not so important in visual, but in cameras, your focal plane has to be very, very closely aligned with the in-focus plane. Otherwise, you never figure out why stars are blurry on one edge and not another. So that's
So you're
what
checking.
I start with.
You're checking the square being square to the optical axis.
Your words dropped out. I didn't hear what you asked.
that screw on the opposite side from your focuser, you're just checking to be square to the optical axis.
That's right, to the end of the tube. You know that you want to have the optical axis of the whole telescope line up very accurately with the tube, which is also skipped a lot. And that sometimes you get offset in those things and you keep trying to take it out with a mirror tilt or rotation or something, but that's not where the problem comes from. So it just leads to frustration. You don't have the degree of freedom under control. But I use a go-to system. And so I want the telescope to not have any cone error, or not have as much cone error as possible. So I try to get everything mechanically aligned like that.
That only works.
I get very good at it because I don't have a permanent setup. Everything I do is portable. So I set it up a lot.
Yeah, the trouble is that with a lot of Newtonians, the optical axis is not parallel to the tube axis, right? Because of the way the secondary mirror has been made.
Unless you have made it that way, then you frequently get professional Newtonians that have some errors in it. A friend of mine up in Pomo, Gary, who he's invited tonight, but I don't see him here. I showed him how to make a mirror, and he made a 10-inch f5, and he sent it off to a telescope company, and they made it. They said, "Oh, that's a very mediocre mirror," and we looked in the telescope, and it didn't really focus very well. And so we took the tube apart, and it had circular loops holding the secondary in place, and they were offset. So we rebent those and straightened it out, and we moved the diagonal back a little bit, and we readjusted it, and then it was just as sharp as a tack. So what he was attributing to the poor mirror, which we had tested it, we knew it wasn't a poor mirror. So we worked on it until we got it all aligned. So he was someone who knows how to make good looking cabinetry and close enough to be a telescope, but he doesn't know the real fine points of tuning it to get it to work.
Okay, Jerry, a question for you. Tom Whittemore used to take, to get that screw on the opposite side of the focuser,
Yeah.
he would, you know, that when he cuts his tube, he would use your adding machine tape to get a very, the circle was really right on. Okay, so you would measure from the top of the tube on the focuser side and the opposite side, but in your case, you're saying no, put a laser in the focuser and then shoot it to the
never touch a laser. Error, no laser. So what I do is everything like Tom does with paper wrapped around. I get a big sheet of paper, wrap it around, and make one edge overlie itself, and then I've got a good circumference on the telescope tube. It won't sit cockeyed. But the big thing that you have to watch out if you're going to measure from the end of the tube is you have to be sure that the tube is square, the end is square with the rest of it. And you just need a big, one of those L-shaped rulers that carpenters use to see if that's
right.
And file down a few points if you need to. But once you get everything square, then you can, I wrap paper around the tube, and then I do the paper, and then I lay out all of my spider support holes and the focuser hole on the paper. And then I put it back on the telescope tube, tape it on, and then I drill those holes.
Okay. And then to get that screw on the opposite side, you do measure from the top of the tube down?
Yeah.
On.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And that's one of the holes I lay out on the paper, and when I lay it out, I make sure that I don't have a seam right opposite the focus.
Yeah.
So I have that point marked exactly, you know, I know where it is linearly, so it'll be exactly opposite when I put it back on the tube.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, can we go around the room real quick and mention what telescopes that you own, and or maybe what project you might be working on? And let's start with Mike Chibnik. And Mike, what telescopes do you own, and are you working on anything new?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I've got a 3-inch fluorite refractor. It's a retrofit of a Migres 80. I got a C8 that I've had since Halley's Comet. I have a C11, which I mounted on my Misu mount this last couple of weeks and took some images. I have an 8-inch f20 Dow Kirkham made by Coulter Optics. And Royce, Jerry, the guy that made your mirror, I asked him, you know, how good the mirrors are, and he says, oh, those mirrors are usually very good. Evidently, in those days, they made really great mirrors. Made my 10-inch, okay, with you guys in f6. And then I just got done with my my COVID project, as I like to call it. A 14.5-inch plate glass mirror, 3/4 of inch thick, that I got back from the Illuminizer, and I mounted it in my star tester that I modified into a Dobsonian, and I've been very happy with the images. As a matter of fact, after this meeting, I'm going to go out and observe with it. It needs tweaking. The mechanicals are not exactly there, but I've been getting some really great views. I'm starting to see things that I hadn't seen before, even with the 11-inch. I mean, there's a lot of light in there. So that's it for now. Until I get that done, I'll be working on the 10-inch f3.
Wow. Okay, Jerry, what's your series of telescopes that you have?
Oh, I have to be careful here. My wife might hear me.
Where do you hide them?
The 18-inch is that I'm working on to be my portable CalStar imaging telescope, because CalStar gets about the best seeing and weather conditions up at Lake, San Antonio, that I experience, and they're shifted to twice a year now. So I use that. I'm going to use that, but right now I'm using a 10-inch f5 that I made, and I use a TeleVue NP127 IS, and I've got a Meade 6-inch f9 refractor mounted out back that I used to take pictures of the comet that just went through, and that's pretty much what I'm using. The NP127 I use mostly for outreach with when we go out and set up for schools and hotels and stuff, because it's easy to operate. It's super wide field, so it shows everybody the context of what they're looking at, and it's easier to find things in a short amount of time because it's such a wide field of view. As a matter of fact, I don't even have a finder on it. I just point it where I want it to go. And I got razzed so much about, oh, you need a finder, you can't afford one or something. So I bought an old finder and mounted it up on top, but I never use it.
So Bill, do you have any telescopes at this moment?
I do not. I'm so sad to say. I'm listening to you guys, and I'm just salivating about all of these instruments you guys have. I want to know, with the bigger scopes that you've got, I think you said 14.5-inch and 18-inch, or what kind of imagery are you getting out of those, and can I see the stuff that you're doing? Where would I go to look for that?
Are you pointing at me?
Mike and Jerry, yeah, both.
Oh, okay.
I
haven't really posted very much around. There are links on our website, SBAU.org, and one of them is to some solar images I took through an Orion 80mm f7 telescope from Australia in 2012. Those are up there. I've given several talks at the club, but so many people have such good photos online, mine just get lost in the crowd, but I can put some up and show you if you want.
Yeah, let's see them.
So,
and mine, mine's like a work in progress. It's just, I can show you a picture of it. It is basically a telescope made out of pieces of scrap and literally trash. I should call it the trash scope, because even the mirror is made out of an old porthole glass that they were tossing out. It's made out of cardboard and foam and various pieces of lumber laying around, and so it's actually the tube part is pretty good. It's on a dog mount, and so as a matter of fact, it wouldn't be usable as an imaging scope now. So I would have to get like a 16-inch diameter sonotube or something like that and mount that in there, and come up with a mirror cell that would hold it in all positions. Right now, it's on what they call a sling, and that's good for Dobsonians, but it's not good for equatorials where it kind of rolls around.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I image with the 11-inch. I do planetary. The C8, I've done a remarkable amount of deep sky stuff, and the Migres I use for wide field and comets and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
and the latest comets I've just used a Canon camera on a tripod or piggyback. So
Oh,
No,
not
let
even
me-
mounted to a telescope.
no,
Yeah.
a lot of comets are very large.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
about
let me
Good wide field for that.
let me interrupt for a second. Hank just kind of asked me a question: is anyone is presenting something, or is it just a chat? And you know, tonight it's just a chat, and probably mostly typical will be kind of a chat. We'll kind of jump around between people. But you know, Mike Chipnick had a PowerPoint that he tried to go through with us last week or the week before. I can't remember which one it was.
Huh.
And so it does vary Hank a bit. Now, Hank asked me this question by using the chat function. So if you turn on the chat function, you can type something over there. And so if you just kind of, without interrupting people, you can kind of type a question, and we might be able to see it and make a comment on it eventually as someone types in the question. So it's a good idea. Thanks for using it, Hank.
Yeah, no problem.
When you get through going around for everybody on their scopes, I can briefly and very quickly go through some charts that I made on how to process images, and it shows some of my images. So I can show you that in a little bit.
And Bob, your telescopes are what right now?
I still have the earliest one was something a roommate left years ago at my place. I think he had gotten it at Costco. It's a 4-inch Meade, you know, one of those ones they used to sell at Costco. Most of the stuff's still there. I was still going to donate that to the club at some point for you guys to, maybe some kid or something, you know, or somebody who's getting started might want it. And I was actually going to play around with that sometime back, but then I just got into other things. I also have the 6-inch mirror that my father made and actually had hooked up with all these strange parts that he got from TRW that he worked for, this metal pop riveted tube, you know, that he made into the optical tube, and it never had any kind of clock drive or anything like that, so we just keep moving it and stuff.
And you brought that to this workshop one time.
Yeah, we did that. We did the test on it, and that you know, ended up being pretty good. Yeah. So I bought a like a sono tube for that, but I haven't gone any further with that to get that going, because then Tim and Tom Whittemore and I were at the Tuesday night thing a lot, and then Tom Whittemore finally gave me this 8-inch that he had in the closet that I guess his wife wanted him to get rid of, a Dobsonian, and I still have to put that together. I got the tube and everything, got to build a little box around it, so it sits in the little Dobsonian base that he built. And then I just broke down. I bought the used Canon T3i and started doing some pictures of the Milky Way and that sort of thing. And then Tim very nicely made the double barn door for me, and I was playing around with that. And I still want to work on that and add a little stepper motor to it to drive it. And I was going to attach either an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi that would sense the angle that it's doing. And then I wouldn't even really need the double barn door, because I could just turn it any fractional amount at once just to try to match, you know, the exact motion that it's supposed to do. But so then what I ended up getting in July was because they had a sale going, it's the Celestron AVX German equatorial mount with and then they threw in a telescope pretty cheap. So I got the 8-inch Newtonian. And then I've been buying different optics and the Barlow lens and all like that, and trying, you know, do some planetary shots. In the last week and a half, and we can talk about this after we go around the whole way, I'm looking now towards getting probably a dedicated astro camera, and the 3 brands looking at it ATIK, A-T-I-K, or QHW or ZWO, and I'm kind of leaning towards ZWO.
ZWO or DWO? ZWO, right?
Z.
Z?
Zebra.
Zebra.
Yeah, ZWO. So, you know, most of the good ones are that thermoelectric cooler. They're expensive as hell, you know. And then if you do the monochrome and you want to do, it comes with a filter wheel, but if you want to do a standard thing, I guess you do RGB and luminance, and then you have 4 times the amount of pictures you got to take. So you got a lot more time and a lot more processing. But I'm thinking if I have it kind of automated with taking the pictures, it may work out. So looking at that, and also Tom, I apologize for not sending any auto stacker stuff. I've been looking at that a little bit this week, and that whole process of going through, you know, the PIP and then auto stackered and then Registack 6. And then I guess if you're doing individual images, there's Deep Sky Stacker. I was doing that until I started doing planetary video and processing that. So I went back today and I was trying to process some more of the Mars video that I have, and getting a little bit better results, but I still need just a better night and better optics. And the whole thing that I put together now with the Barlow, and I bought a, I think it's a 9mm Plössl eyepiece that'll raise the magnification. But once I get the telescope all lined up, and even if I balance it out and I put that on there, it throws it off enough that I can't find Mars in the viewfinder anymore. And a guy on YouTube was complaining about that too. It's enough weight that it can, you know, unless you balance it just perfect, it can really throw it off. And one guy there, his name is Dylan O'Donnell, said he actually is in touch with Celestron. And I thought, this is exactly what I need. What he wanted them to develop in their software is a spherical, or what do you call a spiral search pattern. You would click on it, it would start spiral searching out. So you're not using the hand control going, oh, go left, go right, go up, go down. And then you don't know if you're going in the right direction or not. You don't really know. So for finding objects, I've been playing with the idea of just getting like a 40 or 50 millimeter, something with a wider field of view. So I can pop that in and pop it out, because the 20 millimeter, sometimes I lose it there. And I'm taking a long time, but without going into it, I tried that 4-star alignment with a Celestron, and then the 5th star as a substitute polar alignment. And then there's a function on there where you can go display error, and I had it down to very small arc seconds, both that you do an azimuth elevation, and it was great. And I go, oh, this is great. And then when I started searching around, and I actually left it pointed at a star for a while and came and watched TV and went out, and it had faded away. So it didn't do that great of an alignment. So I've got to get better at doing alignment if I'm going to do longer exposures. So
you're lining down to less than an arc second. When you take images, long exposure images, you generally are experiencing 3 arc second stars. It's hard to get below that.
Yeah.
From our backyard things.
Oh,
so
you will never get below that, because usually the error in just your RA axis is probably about 2 arc minutes or something like that.
Yeah. Much bigger.
If they say you're accurate to 0 arc seconds, don't believe it. It's not true.
Yeah. So I
often, you have to iterate as well. So it's actually, you're better off doing polar alignment first and then do the regular alignment. Anyway.
Yeah. So the problem is I have trouble seeing the North Star, from the backyard where I'm setting it up, and certain spots. But so it has the hand controller for that GoTo Next Star has that PEC, periodic error correction, which would be good. And I want to do the auto guiding. So I don't know exactly what kind of auto guide scope to get and everything, but I think that's what I need, I think, for getting that set up for the right thing. So
with the new auto guiders, with the small pixels, you can actually get away with a very short telescope. I have a friend that has like a 12-inch Dow Kirkham, and he only needs like a couple 100 millimeters. He's used like the Red Cat or some other small telescope like that. If you get really small pixels, it detects it really well. So don't go for a full size on your regular telescope. Go for a relatively short one, you know, like 200 millimeters, 300 millimeter focal length with a.
Yeah, this one has the 1,000, so I was just going to go with that. And then I just learned something the last week. They said for a auto guide scope, you want to go about 1/3 of that, you know, so you want something
Yeah.
like a, you know, 300 millimeter or something auto
Yeah.
guide. So, so
Let's go down to Hank.
Yeah.
Hank, what are you working on and scopes that you have?
Right now I'm working on a control system for my Losmandy. I got a Losmandy. Well, let me start from the beginning what I've got. So I could actually show you guys that. So I started out with a Dobsonian, a Coulter 10-inch that I got from the museum, actually, from the Santa Barbara astronomical unit on one of the star days or something like that. It was like $110 or so, and it came with a Newtonian, a small 4.5-inch Newtonian that I didn't use. But anyway, so I still have that, and I made that as suitable for astrophotography by putting it on a barn door. So I made a box and cut a section out of it and got it working on a barn door. It was dual axis, auto guided actually. So I could use it for astrophotography, and I won a prize for that on the RTMC. That was a long time ago. That was in 2013 or so, but it was a lot of fun. It was not practical, but I just wanted to prove a point.
Hank, what was that? What was the prize that you won at the RTMC that time?
Oh, it's just they have a merit award. That's what it's called. So
I thought you won a telescope, but maybe that's somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's true. I won a telescope too. There was a 127 millimeter carbon fiber triplet of Explore Scientific. That was in 2015. Yeah, I got lucky. So that was a pre-door prize. Yeah, that's not bad.
Wow.
And so that was the end of my do-it-yourself adventures, because then I had to buy a mount for it. So I got an AVX and played around with that. The AVX it's a great mount, very well automated and so on, very user-friendly. But I think it's not quite enough for that 127 millimeter. I was never able to get really good pictures with it. Okay, so what else do I have? I can, if you're interested, I can go to my man cave. I'm going to show you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let me just move over.
What's the ADX? I'm not familiar with that.
Sorry?
Who makes the ADX? I mean, it's ADX?
Yeah, I'll show you.
ATIK, I think.
Can you guys see this?
Ah, yes.
Oh.
Okay, so here, that red monster is my the one that I started out with. Is the
Coulter.
That's the Dobsonian.
Oh,
Let's see.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. And so to the guy who said he doesn't have a scope, you can have this one actually, because I don't use it anymore. It's a 10-inch. It's good.
Wow.
I created some scars on it, but if you like it, I haven't used it in 10 years or so. Well,
Oh, Bob, pick
so
that
next
up.
to it, that thing down there is my Z12. That's a 12-inch Zoomel, and the Zoomel is normally a rigid tube. So what I did was I converted it to a collapsible, and that way it fits somewhat into the car.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah. Here on the ground, I don't know if you can see it. That's an equatorial platform. It's dual axis, auto guided. It looks a bit like a mess. That was almost finished, and I was testing, and then I got then I won that prize, which is sitting here on the ground. You see that carbon fiber scope?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm too close. I don't know. Can you guys see it?
No, we can see it.
Okay. So yeah, that's the Explore Scientific ED127CF. Right next to it is a little ED80, also from Explore Scientific. I thought I'd better buy some merchandise from them because they've been so nice, providing me the prize. Behind that is a Ritchie Chrétien 6. I have not really, well, I've used it a few times, but not very much really. Then there's a mount, there's an LXD.
Who makes that?
What?
The six.
Who makes the Ritchie Chrétien?
Yeah,
The Ritchie Chrétien
is over
Who makes
there.
that?
That is an Astrotech. Well, they don't make it. I mean, it's all Chinese. I don't know which one makes it, but there's like 2 companies, I believe, that do that stuff. Anyway, so that's an LXD55 that I don't use. I bought the RC6 secondhand, and it came with the LXD55 mount, so I thought it was a good deal. It is motorized actually, and I can also auto-guide it, but I tried it once and it had horrible periodic error, but so I didn't use it much. That over there is a little supermarket telescope from a sports store from Big Five. This is the AVX. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, doing nothing, but it's very great to travel with. And this is the Losmandy over here, the big thing. I put, so I got that one 2 years ago, and I bought it without a go-to system because they have this expensive Losmandy system, and I just didn't want to pay the extra $900 for it. I thought that's just ridiculous. So it came with a simple controller that is just good for tracking, and it does it well, but I had to use the go-to circles, and it's just not working very well for astrophotography because, you know, oftentimes you can't see the target. You can make it work, but it's not fun. So now I've built this thing here, this controller here, and I can tell a little bit about that. Can you see it perhaps?
Yeah.
So what you see there is a combination of a Raspberry Pi that runs ECOS and that's a WeMOS. It's an Arduino-like thing that is running an on-step controller. So the on-step controller has Bluetooth in it, and I can control it from my cell phone for alignment. And when I want to do other stuff, astrophotography, then I go to ECOS. It has a planetarium program and plate solving and the whole shebang, auto guiding and so on. So I log on to that with my Galaxy Tab 8. So I don't need a keyboard or a laptop or something. It's all wireless. That's kind of cool. So it's a great mount actually, but I'm still trying to tame it. I've replaced the stepper motors also, by the way. So yeah, there's a lot of do-it-yourself stuff in there. Anyway, that's sort of what I'm doing. I also have a little barn door somewhere. Let me see. Oh yeah, this is the one I think. It's a little. Can you see? This is a little barn door drive on a tripod, and it's also an Arduino. I have to wipe the dust off a little bit. That's sitting over there. Can you see it? Yeah, the Arduino there. Whoops, flips open. And it has a little motor over there in the left corner down there, lower left.
Looks like an all electronic special.
Yeah, it's that motor is like $2. You kind of the cheapest Chinese things, but it runs on 50 milliwatts, so it runs forever. And it just has a screw down there, and just like the other guy said, you can digitally compensate for the inaccuracy of the straight screw. So that makes the whole thing pretty simple. So yeah, that's my story.
Thanks.
I can tell you
that's great.
Very good.
So Tim, what's going on in your neighborhood?
Oh, nothing much.
Otherwise, I shouldn't say Tim. I forgot. Now Tim is no longer Tim. He's Tom Crawford. I keep the Tim got stuck.
No,
but...
Tim is. I go by Tim.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, I started with a 4-inch refractor, Teleview 101, the TV 101, and with that I had the Gibraltar mount. But I also picked up a Takahashi mount, and like HenkA was, you know, at the time when I got it, you could, it was just the go-to features. Takahashi's really expensive stuff, and at the time I just didn't want to add the go-to feature to it or the hand controller, and so they said you can add it later. Well, over the years, it's no longer available. So you have to literally go and find it some Astromod or something to add the feature to it. But otherwise, I just use it as a straight mount. But besides that, I built a 10-inch F5 in the workshop and this is when Tom Whittemore brought the whole workshop down from the Bay Area down here, and then ran a class on mirror making. That's where our workshop actually came from. It was from Tom Whittemore, and it was just a mirror making class, period. It wasn't all the other stuff we're doing now was just left out. And we originally had about 12, 15 people that were building scopes, and that didn't take long for them to fall to the wayside. And so which left a core group of people, which we kind of have now. When we do the workshops, 6 people, there's probably 6, 7 people is very common. And then during that time, the club had gotten a hold of a Russell Porter garden scope.
Oh, yeah.
And as you guys remember that
Yeah.
we had parts of it. And so they wanted to put it together. So I helped to grind a 6-inch mirror there. I think it was a f4.5, f4. And Joe Doyle did we were missing parts to this garden scope. Otherwise, it's really pretty expensive stuff. You can probably, they're probably worth about $150,000 if they're intact, but it wasn't. And we tried finding people on the Riviera that had it or had donated to them. And they lost the parts, like the base on it. Well, Joe Doyle made the base out of wood, and then he worked on the diagonal part of the, to hold the eyepiece and everything. And then we put the whole scope together, and they were going to show it at the museum. And I think it's just collecting dust now, which is good because I turned an edge on that one too, Jerry.
I remember that. You had it perfectly done and you didn't believe the numbers, so you went past it.
He's an expert.
It was really amazing. I took that scope and I had no problems until I got to the point where we were testing it in the workshop, and the numbers we were taking on the pin settings, everything was looking really good. And I ran it through a program that I have. I don't do the stuff that you guys do with the Excel. I'm not good enough to do that, write the programs. So I used one that was online, and I punched in the numbers, and it said that I had like about a half-wave scope, and I was going, this is horrible. I mean, it's just terrible. And instead of just stopping and saying, okay, the Ronchi pattern looked really good. I mean, it was only, Mike, it was only after 20 minutes of figuring that I had that thing done. It looked exactly like the Ronchi pattern that Tom had printed out. And I went home, I kept on screwing around with it. And I screwed the whole scope up. I went home, realized I had put the decimal point in the wrong spot. And that thing was a 20th wave mirror before I started screwing around with it. Anyway, that's the story of that beast. And then now I'm stuck on an 8-inch f5 mirror that I've been working on since COVID came out. I just stopped. I haven't done anything. And I got to the point where I was fighting a turned edge, fighting pitch laps and all kinds of weird stuff that was happening to me. I was doing too much correcting, too many different strokes. And then finally, Tom and Jerry sat me down and just said, hey, do one thing at a time. That's it. And Mike. And that's what I ended up doing. I think I corrected the edge. That's where I'm at now. I'm starting to get it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Starting to going towards, finishing that one. Waiting in the wings. Well, it's amazing. I have a mirror that was given to me by the museum, and the guys in the club, and it's a 12.5-inch cave mirror, f6, and I got that thing. Just needs to be re-illuminized, and it's a really fabulous mirror. Gail, let's see, who was it? That was
Oh yeah, Cave.
oh, what was his name?
Cave.
Huh?
Cave.
Yeah, it's a cave mirror, but I had it in the club.
Jerry, didn't hear you.
Oh. No, I was just reiterating what Tim said. Tim or Tom or whoever he is.
But that there's a national registry for cave mirrors, and I contacted the guy, so it's on the registry now. It's a really, really good mirror. That thing was supposedly sent away, and I think that either JPL or somebody was using it, so it was gone for the longest time before it came back. And it's supposed to be a really good mirror. So along with that, I have a 16-inch that I had f4 that I got the blank from Newport Glass down south. And this was a long time ago. I just said, you know what? I got a feeling Pyrex is going to go away. It did. and I think I got this 16-inch blank pre-generated and everything. I don't think it was over. It was between, from my memory serves me right, I think it was like $400 or $500. It was really a really good deal, and I built the tool myself. I didn't get a tool sent to me, or a sub-diameter tool. Instead, I made a full diameter tool out of you know, the little octagonal squares and 3 pieces of plywood all put together. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a time where everybody was saying, just use dental stone and make your, you know, to make curve against it. You know, it's going to be really easy to make that convex surface out of dental stone and epoxy it to it. And no, I wouldn't listen. I was very, very stubborn, and I wanted to figure out using our equations for, for the sagitta, and figuring out what parts of that mirror, concentric circles, that I route out with a router, and to what I would have to take them to create a tool that had that convex curve. So I did it. And then all I did was I used a belt sander to take all those concentric circles and make them all meet. And then I went ahead and covered that with epoxy and then the tile, and it really close. So it's actually now mated pretty good, and it's ready to go whenever I get done with the 8, which may be before I die, but you know, I'm going to get it done somehow. That's about it for me.
So Tim, you have a 12.5 cave and a 16 that you still got to work on?
Oh yeah. And then there's other, there's other blanks that are actually, when I do the outreach, when we were doing outreach, I was doing the mirror grinding demonstrations with 8-inch blanks, and 2 of them are done. I mean, they're just waiting to, one of them is waiting to polish, and the other one I'm using now with demoing on the outreach. So there's 2 other 8 inches waiting there for to be done as well. So, and then a lot of different 6-inch mirrors that are just sitting around. But there's enough work there for me for years to work on.
Very good.
So that's about it. The one I wouldn't mind doing before I can't lift anything anymore is the 16. I took a look through Ed Edwards' 16-inch that he got up the gun club one time, looking at Saturn, and man, there's something. Somebody said when you get the 16-inch, you can just about see anything. That's kind of the limit, but I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's a lot of guys out there that are making 14.5-inch mirrors that are really nice. They show a lot of detail of a lot of targets. So Mike can attest to that. He's got a pretty good 14.5 now. And I think Tom
I really don't know. The star test looks good. Whether I've actually accurately interpreted the star test, but it gives pretty good images.
Well, when you were talking about M13 and saying that you were just seeing so much more in the core, and that's when I started realizing I think that's a pretty clear.
Yeah, and familiar objects started looking different. Like the Dumbbell Nebula was lost in the nebulosity of the ears. I couldn't see the ears in its entirety, but you could see that the nebulosity was going off to the edges from the dumbbell. And
did you try the double?
Yeah, it splits it.
Yeah. It's like that.
I'm not sure
it sounds like it's
that cleanly. But it definitely splits it easy. You can see the 2 cores, and the scene here in Rio Vista kind of sucks. We've got more. Up until recently, we had more wind turbines than we did people, and so. For the most part of this year, the average wind speed's been like 20 miles an hour, gusting to 30.
God.
So Mike
I
think Mike Chibnik is the only person here that probably has his own observatory. So that's kind of cool. What diameter is that observatory, Mike?
Too small. it's 8 feet, and with the I could show you pictures of the inside. I've got a Misu 200 mount there, and now I've got the C11 with the Migres side by side, and you got to watch it that you don't hit the mount. So you know, and I needed to get a mount like this. I mean, observatory that's a dome because of the winds. It gets really bad, and even with the C8 on the Misu mount, which is really sturdy and you know hefty, it was pushing the optics around in the C8 from the wind gusts, and that was behind a tuck shed that was supposed to block the wind, which never did. And so when I put it in the dome, all of a sudden, you know, my stars went all over the place, and I was
So
able to image.
now you just need to operate it remotely, right?
Well, let me tell you, it's pretty tight. I have a friend that wants me to take that 14 and a half inch and put it on the Misu, and I don't see how I'll be able to walk in there without hitting myself on something. You know, there's the tube's going to be would be 16 inches in diameter and about 4.5 feet long, and you know, that's you know, when that thing starts swinging around, I don't know if there's any area that I wouldn't be hit from. I have one bay, and I probably have to hunker down in the bay with a laptop on my lap, getting out of the way.
Mike, you said it was an 8-foot observatory. 4.5 feet should swing around real nice.
Yeah, except when you have to walk around.
Oh, just run it by your computer from the house.
Yeah, oh yeah, right, yeah. Well, it's not totally automated now, but you know, I'm out there sitting at the thing there, making sure that things don't go wrong, because they can. So you know, I prefer to be out there with the scope if I can. So
real quick, what I came up with my telescopes is I started out with a C8, 400 bucks from the club that I got. It was on the fork mount, this old orange tube C8. And then I think I got the Lunt solar scope, 80 millimeter. And then I've got an Explorer Scientific 152 doublet, which is pretty cool. It actually works pretty well with just being a doublet. And now I gained Gail Massey's C11 Celestron, and I had the C8. I moved it. I took it off the fork mount and put it on an AVX mount, and then now I've got the C11, and the AVX was just getting jammed trying to move it around, so I went and bought both these things are used, the C11 and a CGX Celestron mount, and I'm trying to use that, but I'm not that happy. It doesn't seem to track as well as I'd like, so I'm trying to figure out how to do auto guiding. So that's my next trick that I'll be doing. Now, does anybody have anything that they need help with that Jerry could help them with at all, or other suggestions?
Trying to find Ebony Star for Micah.
What?
How to find some Formica?
Ebony Star for Micah. It's no longer there.
No, you know, I actually called the company, Mike, and they don't make it anymore. And if you call the guy at Astro Systems, when he sends out his stuff now, there's another Formica that he uses. I have that on the little 8-inch that I built, and it's not. I can't remember. I think it's called Lunar Mist, and when I talk to the people at, it's not Formica, it's the Wilson Art. When I talked to the people at Wilson Art, they just said, yeah, we threw that whole process out. So all the corrugated different, Formicas they had, they're just gone. And so they have like 1 or 2 or 3 different types that have a little bit of stippling on them. But he uses this one that's called, I think, Lunar Mist. I'm not that bowled over by it. Ebony Star was by far the best.
So Bill, what he's talking about, the Formica, that's how they make these Dobsonian telescopes. So they have some stiction. So when you tilt your telescope, it stays in place. So it's kind of like a textured Formica, I think you might say. So it gives you some surface grab on the bearing surfaces when they tilt their Dobsonian telescopes, which Dobsonians are just a great telescope. Oh, that's right. I have a 12-inch Dobsonian, so that's a great one for outreach. It's really quick to set up. You can carry it. I can fit it in the back seat of my car and take it around and put it up really quickly. And 45 pounds and two 45-pound pieces for 12-inch. But it's just, I can carry that around.
I have one, on a side note, Mike put Westmont, the 11-inch up there that I used, the altitude bearings, if I'm not mistaken, they have the usual Teflon pads, but I think they actually used a nylon rope as in lieu of the ebony star. I think it's nylon rope, and it actually worked pretty good. It's not too bad. So that's one thing. I'll take a closer look at it if we ever get out again.
Yeah,
we will.
I need to get some Teflon also. When I moved up here, it seemed like a lot of stuff disappeared on its way up here. I guess I was listening to my spouse too much about getting rid of stuff, and I had this big piece of Teflon that I no longer have, so I have to get Teflon now. So
MasterCard has really good stuff.
What is?
I have a suggestion for Bill if he's looking for a telescope.
Yeah.
One place to go, and probably Bob might tell you this as well, that cloudynights.com is a great forum to join.
Yeah.
And you can look up just about any subject there in astronomy, telescopes, and eyepieces, and astrophotography, I think. So that's a really great site. Bob, have you used that site?
Yeah. In fact, I've been looking at it more lately. I always check in the classifieds whenever I go, ooh, there's something I want, it's gone already. So it's like good stuff.
Fast.
Yeah. And then they've got a lot of good forums too.
I bought a telescope from looking at one time about the year 2000. I was looking at cloudy nights in the refractor area, and all of a sudden, as I was looking, this 6-inch f9 Meade doublet refractor showed up, and and it had a contact information. So I told him I'll buy it, and it turned out it was Paul Wynn, and he lived about half a mile. So I showed up at 11 o'clock at night and paid him for it and took it away. That's an excellent scope.
Paul Wynn, so he bought and sold so many scopes, it's incredible.
Yeah. That was how
you take all the scopes we had tonight, and he had that in maybe a month.
So if you want, I can show you real quickly the scan over the talk I gave, but it took an hour to give, but I would only take 1 minute, and it has some of my pictures in it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds great to me.
I'm going to try this.
I've turned on sharing of anybody's screen, so if somebody wants to share their screen, they can. So
by the way, I forgot to tell you one thing. I ordered a 12-inch Newtonian, and it's an astrograph, so it's in the mail. Everything is slow these days, but it should be coming sooner, I hope.
Nice.
Okay, that wasn't.
Who's that from,
I
Hank?
wanted to get at.
PTO, I think. I mean, I get it from Ops, and I think it's called a TPO scope, some sort of Chinese brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So this
we're
is
seeing Jerry's screen here.
This is mine. This is the background is my image of the double cluster, and you can see the red giants down in the lower cluster. So can you all see this screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you maximize it?
What's that?
Can you maximize it? This is PowerPoint, right, or not?
Yeah, go full
It's
screen.
PowerPoint.
Make it full screen.
It's okay. Usually there's this little button. Doesn't matter. Yeah, to the lower right, there's something. If you.
Yeah, there's
Full screen.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, this was I gave this talk in 2012, so I had this joke in there. So I learned to do this from Advanced Imaging Conference, and I took a class, a 4-day class from Adam Block. And the thing was, this is not relevant, but there's a misuse of the word noise in image processing, and it's very confusing if you use it wrong, but we don't need to get into that. So I put together, I started with Canon 50DH and 60DA, took raw images, then raw to fits. Then I did the calibration with all the darks and brights. I corrected bad pixels with a bad pixel map, and then I debayered it because it was a single shot camera. And then you did pixel reject and impute in CD stack 2. These are the same things that you do in your automatic stacking, like Registacks and CD Stacker. But this is done all manually, because it's the way I learned to do it. I did registration of all of them in a program called Myra Pro. And then back in CD Stack 2, I normalized them, did Sigma Reject and Mean combine. Then I flattened the background, registered them all to the same stack. And then I worked on the luminance to do a deconvolve. And then I created the RGB, and then I put them together later. And this shows now each of the steps that I did. This is the FITS format, which is made just for astronomy. And this is a picture, a raw picture of the Sombrero Nebula, M103 or M104? M104, there it is. And this is one of my master flats, master dark, a master bias frame, explained what it was. And then, but my favorite is the bad pixel map, which I can explain the difference for anyone that's interested.
Hey, Jerry, have you ever used DSS for stacking? Because I think it combines pretty much all the stuff you showed.
I have. I taught a class in DSS about 18 months ago for the museum. But this was before those came out. And this is where you can see that on the left here with the image, I've got a star that is, it's a blue star. And so the red pixels are dark. And this is the same thing after it's been debayered. So it calculates what the right illuminance would be for those pixels that are picking up the wrong color. And then you go through and you pick out bad pixels, things that don't fit a certain curve with their neighbor. And everything that's red is going to be rejected in the next frame. Same here, this is another one, but the background is M101. This is one of the Leo triplet, it's the hamburger one. I guess I didn't mark what it was. Then we went through Myra and did a stacking thing. It's brutal to do it by hand, but it's very, very nice algorithm. This is M51 after it's been registered. So, and it's normalized because they all have to be at about the right thing, otherwise one will dominate. So it's going through the steps of that. Now this one, this is a star from a set of stars, set of images, about 12 or 15 images. And the red stuff here is produced by wind on that frame. And because it doesn't match up with the most of the rest of the stars, it's been selected to be rejected. And so they'll come out, even the bad one with, the wind blew it all over the place. It'll come out looking like that.
It's Sigma clipping, isn't there something like that?
Yes. Let's see, subframes. It's been 6 or 8 years since I did this, so I'm not remembering the spiel associated with each one. But yeah, there's a Sigma clipping in it too that I did. This is a satellite path. Things that are unique to each frame of the set are going to be rejected. You can see it's all red here. This is M101 in the background. Yeah, this is standard Sigma reject. There are different options you can do. You can just add them up. I always do the mean, and because it prevents saturation. And the key thing is you want to not saturate your star images. You lose the color, but that comes later. This is 12 6-minute images in M101, and this is the blue frame. These are showing unstacked. This is a single subframe, and this is the stacked frame, 5 minutes, 12 5 minutes of, I didn't write down the NGC number. Oh, NGC 6328. It's the third one in the Leo triplet. And then sharpen, oh, that's right. We do sharpen the luminance by using deconvolution and pre-deconvolution, post-deconvolution. This one and the next one, this is pre-deconvolution, this is post-deconvolution. You can see the sharpest difference. This is pre, this is post. See these two stars here? They're a blob here, but you can actually tell they're two stars here. And then we do through, that was the luminance. Now we go back and we go through a series of steps to combine the RGBs into color images. This is my cat that was always watching me when I did my imaging processor. And when you're done with all this imaging calibration, this is what the image looks like. And I know, you know, this is now in Photoshop, the TIFF image, but it's real dark. So now we have to stretch it to bring it out, but it is processed. And then we go through the different process layers, which will take a while, about how to stretch it, linear stretch and log stretch or curve stretch. And the key to not saturating colors and turning all stars white is to never bring this part up to this corner here and always come into it slow. How to use Photoshop in that. Let's see, luminance before decon, after deconvolution. Okay, so getting down to the end, we're using masks to blend things in. And this is NGC 7733 near the Great Square in Pegasus. This is Orion's Nebula, the Running Man Nebula over there. This is the Crescent Nebula. The Pleiades.
Are these?
I've got such a delay. I'm not seeing any of them.
Oh, you're not seeing any? I'm going too fast.
I've got a huge delay on this iPad. Don't worry about it, Jerry. It's just this iPad.
This is.
Ooh, okay, there's the Crescent. I'm at the Crescent. That's really neat.
Okay.
Are these taken with different scopes, or?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're. This one was taken with an NP127 up at Lake San Antonio at a CalStar meeting. This one was taken either up at, this is M33 in Triangulum. You can see the red hydrogen alpha regions in the neighboring galaxy. And you can see its little companion galaxy up here. So this was taken either up at CalStar or it was taken in my backyard.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
what's the difference between using a 5-inch refractor like your 127mm refractor and using a 11-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain a reflector telescope? You know, these are beautiful for a small telescope. You're getting galaxies. I thought, you know, in a sense that you'd be better off having a 11-inch or bigger telescope to get galaxy pictures. What do you think?
Some of these were taken with a 10-inch f5 Newtonian, some with a 6-inch f9 refractor, NP127 IS, and some of them with my 12.5-inch. But when you ask a simple question, what's the difference? There's a lot of things that make it different. First of all, you could collect more light with a bigger scope. So it's simply aperture to get stars. So because stars are point sources, the stars get brighter and you see more of them with bigger apertures at almost any focal ratio. But just like daylight photography with a camera, the brightness of an extended image like the moon or Saturn or the nebula here, it gets brighter with a faster system. So if you take something with an f4, it takes you a certain length of time to get a certain image density. But if you have an f8, it takes you 4 times as long to get the same image density. So you go with much brighter images if you go faster scope. There's also a balance between the pixel, your scope's diffraction image, and the pixel size in the camera. There's a common statement that they match, some websites want to match your camera to your scope. So you want to have a star image, your finest pinpoint stars span about 2 pixels in your camera. I like it. I like much more oversampling because you get much higher definition and it makes the processing easier, because if you're down to where a star is almost 1 or 2 pixels and you're trying to reject hot pixels in your camera, the algorithm has to tell the difference between something that, is that a star or is that a hot pixel, to make it go away.
Well, for hot pixel, you take biases, right? That's just a very short exposure, and that takes the hot pixels out. You don't need an algorithm to estimate it, right?
In principle, yes, it does. But in the case of a DSLR, it doesn't, because the DSLR, you don't have any temperature control on the camera, on the focal plane. And so the camera, you might take 12 frames in a row at 5 or 6 minutes each, but they all might be at a slightly different temperature because the camera body heats up with the electronics doing the processing and taking the image. And while you have to have, when you take these frames, you need to have exactly the same exposure time. You also need to have exactly the same temperature. And the image density that's recorded, the sensitivity of your focal plane is exponentially exponentially dependent on temperature, but only linearly dependent on exposure time.
No,
So
hot pixels don't depend on temperature. It's just you take a 1/4000 seconds image and you have it.
Hot pixels do depend on temperature because they're all dark current. There's no photocurrent in them. And the dark current depends on the temperature of the focal plane because it's the pixel is a diode and it's not sensitive to light in the ideal case. And so it gets brighter or dimmer. So if you take a picture and one of the frames that you're using for your dark frames, that's why you do a master dark, the pixels will show up a little too bright because that frame was taken at too high a temperature. So when you subtract it, it over subtracts and it leaves, and it adjusts the whole frame, makes it brighter, and it fills the background up with black dots due to the subtraction error. That's why I like, rather than doing dark pixels, dark frames, I like doing a pixel map, which is a similar thing. You make it from a dark frame, but it only records the location of the hot pixel. It doesn't record the amount of the hot pixel that you want to take away. And so it blanks all hot pixels, and then it fills that pixel in with an average of its 4 nearest neighbors and 6 next nearest neighbors. I think that's 6. Anyway, I find that leaves my images with less black dots in them. So it's easier to do. But if you have a single shot color camera that takes a picture and it has a cooler in it, so it's right, and you have temperature control, then a dark frame subtract is very good.
Hey, Jerry, I'm going to show a picture that Robert Richard did with his C11 using the ATIC camera that does stacking within the camera. Yeah. So let me see if I can show you that. If I can show, I guess it's this one here. Let's share this. So Bob Richard did this with this, it's called the ATIC Horizon camera. Yeah. And I think he did it over 40 minutes, 80 frames of 30 seconds each on an F10 C11. It was a C11 Edge. And that's what he got, you know, instantly from his camera by, you know, color. I'm not sure if it's a CCD or not, or whether it's a CMOS type camera.
It's a CMOS camera. I have the same camera.
Oh, you do? You have the Horizon?
Yeah, that's what I got to use my I got it just before the COVID hit. And I was going to get, because I was going to set up at the outreach to compete with Chuck. And so.
That does stacking in the camera?
Yeah, I don't use that, but that's the camera.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't seen much action because of COVID. So that's my new outreach technique, is to use that.
So dumb question, can you shoot video with a camera like that too, or is it just a frame rate thing?
This one, CMOS, the reason CMOS is getting more popular is it's cheaper because commercial cameras use it.
Yeah.
It does read out fast enough that you can do a video. With CCD, it's very difficult to do a real-time video because it takes so long to read out some of the bigger chips. But I don't know if this one does that or not. I think it does.
I was watching this video from the ATIC CEO and their company guys describing their cameras, actually a lot of the day today. And they were talking about, this was, they had made the video last year, but they said their supplier of the CCDs are going away. You know, they were getting Sony CCDs, and apparently there are only going to be 2 more. So I think they may be shifting a lot of the things to CMOS.
The camera business is really turbulent. You know, Canon and Nikon and stuff were big camera sellers, and they're not anymore. No one gets an interchangeable lens camera like that. Very small market. Everything's in cell phones now. That's the major camera. And some of the cell phones chips are just phenomenal. I mean, they're in a cell phone. About 5 years ago, they came out with a 14 megapixel camera. That's just crazy sharp, very high density image. And their cameras are really good, but there's such a small market. There's not a lot of profit in making all this plethora of chips they make. I used to work on, that was my career when I was working at Santa Barbara Research Center, was making infrared cameras for spacecraft. And we had a 10,000 by 10,000 element silicon array made by Fairchild Imaging. And that was leftover from a batch they made for the one of the Mars probes, I think the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. And
SBRC in 1983, just for a short while, and then I guess it got absorbed by Raytheon, and we at SAIC we worked with those guys on the VIIRS.
Yeah,
VIIRS. Yeah.
VIIRS was picking up. I think they delivered their 3rd or 4th VIIRS. I was working on the first one when I retired in 2006.
They were still crowing about it when I worked for Raytheon for about 6 years.
Yeah, when it went under the Nunn-McCurdy Act, they weren't really happy then. That's why they hired us to actually get. Well, I mean, we didn't. All we were doing was software validation, but yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So
Hey, I have a,
what's that?
Bill has a question.
It might be a little tangential. Are you guys having trouble with Elon Musk's Starlink satellites that he's launching like 60 at a time?
Well, I haven't had, since he's been launching that crap, that stuff, we haven't, I haven't had enough clear nights to really know yet, you know.
Okay.
So I don't know. I see pictures that amateurs take, and they show a lot of Starlink, you know, streaks in them and stuff, but the software that I use, the way I use it, so far I haven't seen anything that can't be easily removed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but stackers like Deep Sky Stacker automatically removes it. I mean, those programs are really good. They do all of these steps that we discussed earlier, and they also take care of satellites. And also about the satellites, there's probably a bit of a misunderstanding, because first they have this Krypton motor, right? And that Krypton motor puts it in higher orbit, and it takes several days for that. So that's what you see in the news media, all these stripes. But once that's worked out, then once it's in the shadow of the Earth, then it's probably not much of a problem, at least not for us.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're that big either.
I think they've agreed to paint them black or something like that. I think I read something.
Yeah.
I mean, low Earth orbit, right? So that helps too. So but once they start pushing it out higher up, then it's a problem. But
yeah.
But I happened to walk in the backyard one night. It was about 7:30 or something. It was dark, and I just looked towards the west, and I went, "Oh my God!" It just looked like UFOs. It was just they'd launched that day, and it was the stream just coming up over the horizon. They went overhead. And it's like, this is just unbelievable. And I got in touch with a friend of mine who followed, that I worked with, that follows that a lot. He goes, "Oh yeah, the Starlink launched today," you know. So it was just an amazing thing to see, though. They look surreal. They look just so clear that it's like, what the heck is this coming over me right now? You know?
I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, especially his vision for Mars.
Yeah.
So, and I think we need the satellite connected system that he's building. But I'm a little nervous about it.
No, there's definitely, good side, bad side to that story.
Yeah.
He's a visionary that actually comes through with his visions.
Yeah.
A lot of these other companies like the Orion, how many billions of dollars they, spent on it in, 20 years or something like that, and he comes up with something in 10?
Yeah, Boeing is building the Orion capsule for NASA, and the NASA doesn't have a lot of faith in the software, it turns out.
Yeah.
So
I did just read that the last American astronaut to use a Russian launch system.
Soyuz, yeah.
Took off. And after that, we're not going to need them at all anymore, which is really terrific, I think.
Yeah, I often think if you could go back, like maybe not even this far, but 15 years, and you got up and you gave a briefing about boosters that are going to land themselves, you would have been laughed out of the room. You know, I once presented, or didn't present, but I said to a guy, we had some Navy guys briefing, and I was talking about, they were talking about cruise missiles, and I was talking about putting, you know, the idea of putting GPS on them. And so a guy raised his hand, you know, was more senior than me, and suggested it, and they said, oh, if we ever go to war with the Russians, GPS is the first thing they're going to take out. And then I told that to another friend, and he said, with what? They're at half geosync. You know, they're not taking GPS out very easily at all. But that was they thought the idea of using GPS on weapons was like ridiculous idea, you know. So.
But they do use them on weapons.
Yeah, I know they do now. They didn't then, you know. It's like, but these guys were thinking it was a horrible idea, you know. So.
Jerry.
Well, my last project before I retired from consulting was putting on hypersonic cruise missiles that went from inside the atmosphere to outside the atmosphere, and how to do stellar navigation on them in case there was no GPS capability. So,
Whoa.
so that was how fast can it turn on? Because in the lower atmosphere, when it's going super strong, like if you launched it from a ship with a railgun, which seems to be the way everybody's going, then it creates this ion cloud around it, shockwave. But as it gets out of the lower atmosphere, that disappears. And how soon can you see through it and get up to star navigation?
Yeah, we had, that was one of my tasks, was to work on the line of sight calibration, so you'd get a rough thing of where it's pointing. And then we did it with star triplets, you know, because the star triplets, you'd form every triplet you could in the field of view, and then you'd match that, and you'd do a rotation and a translation. But it turned out if you're off by too far, they call it the lost in space problem, and it's too much.
Back about 15 years ago, they discovered that a star that nobody knew was variable, that it was variable because they were doing exactly that.
Oh.
They kept trying to lock up on a triplet of stars, but there were only two there. And everybody stuck through their ephemeris trying to say, well, that star has to be there. And then after a short while, it started coming back on. So they found out it was variable. Took it out.
What's a railgun?
A railgun is like a naval cannon, but it doesn't use gunpowder. It uses electromagnetic waves spaced down the set of coils.
Wow.
So, and it leaves.
And it launches a projectile of some sort, or
the projectile is completely inert. You don't need any explosives. So it's much safer because the projectile hits with so much kinetic energy that if it was packed with high explosive, you would never notice. The kinetic energy is everything.
Wow.
Yeah, for that line of sight, because we were testing this in a lab, and we couldn't take it out at night or anything like that. We built a big box that was black plexiglass, and then had a shop drill tiny little holes in it to an exact match of where the stars are supposed to be. And I went to Radio Shack and bought a bunch of LED lights, and we just took them all up, and we had it point at that box so we could test the line of sight calibration function. It was kind of fun. Yeah.
I'm gonna shut down here, guys. It's just about 9. So.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was fun talking to y'all.
Yeah.
So,
thank you so much, Tom. Great job you did tonight. Got to tell you, I really loved it.
Yeah. What's that backdrop? What's that backdrop you have, Tom? Are you out on top of your roof, or?
It's one of the backgrounds that Zoom has. I think Bill has a Zoom background as well. Is that
It's just a nice shot. This is just off the Santa Monica Pier. You can upload your own.
So you can put your own picture
backdrop.
Yeah.
I had a laundry room.
Okay.
But you got it. Oh, Tim, it looks like you got a better signal.
I had to leave. The cat wanted to go take a crap in the back room, and I was in there, and she was going, "Get out of here!" Hey, next time, I'd like to talk a little bit about tube currents in the scopes.
Okay.
You know, basically, we went through this once before. I was thinking that, you know, when you do star tests and you have a windy, or if you have a wind in the upper atmosphere, it really disturbs what you're looking at. But when we're blowing fans over the mirrors in our scopes, I think Andy Allen had a really good design where he was blowing air over the top of the mirror and the bottom. And I mean, he had just great looks in his scopes. But I want to know if there's some kind of effect that these fans have on the images. So maybe we can do that next time.
Okay, sure.
Jerry will look it up.
Oh, no.
He probably already knows now.
Yeah. I think that's going to fall in the lesser of two evils category.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Good night.
Well,
All right. Yeah.
thank you, guys.
If anybody has any topics, let me know. You know, send me an email, and I'll put it out to everybody else. Tim, I'll get together with you about notifying other people in the telescope workshop that we should notify.
I have a whole list I can send you, and I think there's like 64 people in it. You know, I accidentally went to, I did a FaceTime accidentally with, what was his name? Rajiv, remember Rajiv? Now, I don't know if he's in India now or not, but he did the same thing with me. He accidentally FaceTimed me too. So I ended up emailing him and saying, hey, I'm sorry I did that. And he goes, yeah, me too. And so I touched base with him. But it would be interesting to see where he is. He's saying he wants to get back into making a telescope again. But I think something like 64 people on our list for the workshop.
Okay.
A lot of people don't do it, and I think we kind of gotta be careful of the selection, how big you make it. Then it gets kind of out of control.
Yeah.
And I would also like you going?
Jerry.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to talk about where you're going to take this Zoom to, because I don't think we're going to be back out doing outreach very soon, and we might be able to do something with this that could really we could really do something with this. It's starting to look pretty good.
Yeah, if you can work from your home and show people your telescope view through your telescope, be kind of nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm wondering if, because Chuck, when he does his outreaches, he has his telescope out there in a monitor. And, it's one thing to have people walking by with a monitor, but with COVID around, can't really do that. But if you had a monitor that you could throw over Zoom, hey, it's kind of a neat idea, Tom.
Oh, sure.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, we can discuss that one next week too.
Okay. All right. So everybody, thanks for showing up, and I'll notify you next time. It's going to be automatically next Tuesday, 7:30. So it's going to be every week. We're just going to do this.
Bill, nice meeting you. If you're still there, nice meeting you too.
Nice meeting you both too. And Hank, I'll be talking to you the next day or two.
Yeah. So I have the scope. I don't have eyepieces. So if anybody has eyepieces lying around, just send them to Bill.
Yeah.
Patchwork.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks.
Guys.
Bye-bye. See you, Bob.
See ya. Thanks for joining.
Sure. Pleasure.